So in an effort to get rid of the filibuster, they are calling it racist, which is ridiculous because Democrats used the filibuster over 300 times last year. Last year! I thought it was going to be 300 times in the last, decade. Once a day? Okay, Democrats used the filibuster 327 times compared to only once by the GOP.
So here's a question. Do you feel like there's more innovation and economic mobility today than ever before, but feel increasingly unable to attain it? Under the overly politicized and ever-changing world, has there ever been a more scrutinizing time to be alive, while simultaneously having the capability to live a free and independent life?
Scientific and technological advancements of the past several decades have brought us to the greatest point in human history. But we need to address the elephant in the room. There are those with money, power, and influence who have created a system to keep you distracted, indifferent, and dependent, while large corporations, career politicians, and mainstream media normalize the eroding of our American liberties.
The true road to independence can no longer be paved through political elections or pointless regulations, but rather through the deliberation of ideas, safe from censorship and polarization. Only through liberty of mind and empowering individuals to take responsibility of their future can we all truly lead happy and fulfilling lives.
If this resonates with you, then get ready. We'll tackle events head on, share what the implications are for you, and explore all necessary solutions to ensure you can maintain a life of freedom and independence. This is Matt and Calvin, and you're listening to Elephants in the Room.
Dope. All right. Welcome everybody. You are listening to Elephants in the Room, and we actually have a bit of an announcement. We have a third here in the studio with us. Michaela, do you want to say hi?
Hey guys, it's me.
This is Michaela. This is my that was me shining my fingernails. This is my girlfriend in the studio here, who's going to be kind of, just giving us a bit of a girl's take, manning the TV, pulling up some articles for us, and just kind of hanging out. So, Michaela, we're glad to have you.
Thank you guys. I'm the laugh in the background.
Yeah, she's the background laughter, so you guys know that our jokes are funny. Yeah. So
something that really surprised me from the news this last week, for the first time ever, I was feeling the burn.
Really?
As in, Bernie Sanders did something
Really?
right in my eyes. For really the first time ever, actually.
First time ever?
Okay, I shouldn't say ever. Like, back whenever I was a little bit less wise into politics, there was a moment where it's like what Bernie had to say sounded like a good idea, but then I realized that none of it is a good idea because it's all based off of socialism or communism.
Well, it sounds great. You're like, oh my God, this guy, he's one of the people.
Oh,
He's the man of the people. And then you check out his $6 million book deal, and you're like, oh yeah, I would be a socialist too.
Yeah, but specifically about Bernie, though, in particular, there was some reporters that asked him about how he felt about President Trump's ban from social media, and his response was, "I'm not a fan about it. It made me uncomfortable." So, in other words, he's on
our side as far
as
he's
he's against the fact that they just silenced the president of the United States. And honestly, what's alarming is that came from a socialist saying that he's uncomfortable with it. Democrat socialist, that's what he called himself.
And here's the thing. Here's one thing I will give Bernie Sanders credit for is the simple fact that in the last 2 decades, there's really only been 2 politicians that kind of were a giant middle finger to the elites, and that was Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. So while they came at it from completely different sides of the same coin, they were both very much against the power of elites.
So no, you've actually got a decent point there. Now, specifically because from the way that I'm looking at it is Bernie's gotten robbed out of 2 presidential selections for his own party. Like, they literally were like, "Hey Bernie, rev up the party, rev up our
Bernie
voters,
bros, get them excited."
Yeah, exactly. Get them on the burn train, and then it goes all the way to the point of them finally choosing their candidate for their party, and then Bernie just always last minute it just gets burned.
Yeah. No, every time.
For lack of a better term.
Well, and not only stealing votes, stealing campaign funding during the 2016 primaries. Money that was donated to Hillary Clinton that was donated to Bernie Sanders was funneled to Hillary Clinton on the back end, and Democrat voters found out before the 2016 election. So they knowingly voted for a Democrat, knowing that the party that they're voting for just robbed votes from somebody who was most likely the popular vote candidate.
It's true.
So it's like,
and that's still the horn they're tooting for Hillary and all that.
I mean, that they still haven't let the 2016 election go. They just arrested a guy in Florida for posting a meme, which, granted, it did have a phone number on it saying text this number to vote for Hillary. I mean, I do see how it's, look, is it voter suppression? Yeah, maybe. Do I think they have any leg to stand on when it comes to voter suppression? Absolutely not.
Okay,
Look at the Times article. They admitted it.
But when you call it voter suppression, if you're dumb enough to think that you're casting a vote for a presidential election
Over
by
the
texting
phone.
a number, like you have to know that's a joke from just
Right.
Come on, like
No, it's
like, and what's if I'm not. That happened in Florida too.
Florida.
Yeah, like that's DeSantis.
But
It's federal. It's federal. It's not
you
coming
know,
from the state. Yeah.
DeSantis, I feel like, would probably. I mean, he's the biggest critic of big tech right now, which is, something that, aside from his complete no lockdown policy, his stance on big tech, I love. I absolutely love it, because the things that are going to happen in Florida, where do you think wealthy money goes when people retire? They go to Florida. Florida and Texas, they're two of the wealthiest states aside from California and New York State. But they have the largest cities. That's not something Texas or Florida can tout. But at the same time, what happens in Florida a lot of the times bleeds out to the rest of the states, just like in California. They hold that much weight. So if they're holding big tech accountable in Florida, they're going to have to hold them accountable everywhere, because it's just simply going to cost too much money to have 49 separate filters for different state laws.
I guess. I mean, I'd love it if that was the case. I mean, I
That's
agree with.
optimistic,
I
for sure.
I feel like that's optimistic.
For
Yeah,
sure.
like that's kind of. We'll have to see how things play out, and especially with the federal government, like just already ruling the way that they are currently under the Biden administration. It's just I don't know. I just don't have much faith in this system at the moment. But it's not. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how we'll have to see how the trips. I mean, did you see the press conference last week?
Oh my gosh. I mean, not only did I see the press conference, I think you and I have sent back and forth 5 or 10 hilarious gaffes from Joe Biden. And what was funny, let's talk about the press conference. Snopes, which we know is the fact-checking website Snopes, but is historically George Soros Foundation funded. Yeah. So it's essentially a liberal hit piece. It's a liberal hit publication that publishes fact checks. They had to admit that Joe Biden straight up said during his press conference that he was in the Senate for 120 years.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So Joe Biden went longer than any other U.S. president since taking office before having a solo press conference. Right, before taking questions from reporters. Went the longest of any president in history. And in his first press conference, it was just gaff-ridden. He's just screwing up all over the place. But one of his screw-ups was he said he was in the Senate for 120 years. Which, look. We all mess up in speech. That's not something I'm going to hold anyone accountable for, but to not correct it, when somebody is flustered when they make these mistakes and they don't go back and correct them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, on top of that, like, the man walked out with, I mean, how many different pieces of paper, and they were all going over each of the 9 questions he was going to have to deal with, and it's like he had literally, it seemed like the entire thing was staged. He had 9 reporters in order, like, he was like, all right, here's the layout of the room. These are the names circled for you. Hey, Joe, just pay attention to the notes and you can't mess up.
It's funny you say that. I actually posted something in the Telegram group about this. From his press conference, there are actual images of a pamphlet that he had in his hand with specific reporters circled. And in the video during the press conference, he's calling out the names of reporters on questions. Yeah, so and so from CNN, go. Without looking out into the audience, without calling on a single reporter. So, like, these are pre-planned questions. Like, you can deny it all you want, but when there's images coming out of specific journalists circled, no eye contact, you're calling on these journalists and they're just lobbing you up softball ass questions. It's like, you can only play me for a fool for so long.
Well, and also, like, when he was, going on his mini tangents throughout answering the questions, like, he would lose his train of thought and he'd be like, oh, where am I? And then, looks down at his paper and then it's like, okay, check. I already got them. Okay. Oh, all right. Joe Bag of Donuts from, CBS. I mean, there's nothing specific. I don't know if there's, I just said CBS, but I mean, I should have said CNN. There really was. But it's.
Here we go. Can you actually, babe, pull up our Telegram group on the computer? It's if you go to the bottom right here.
Well, and then there was, like, the other gaffes throughout Biden's press conference. I mean, oh gosh, I've got it. I just made a couple. I just made a couple notes. It was just like there was so many. It's like it was actually crucial to just remembering. Oh,
my gosh,
okay.
I even had pictures and everything on here.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so it covers voting rights policy. Oh yeah, it's okay. It's HR 1. What he wants to do with HR 1, and he's talking about voter suppression, and specifically he wants to eliminate voter ID cards. So hey Matt, what do you need to get a book from the library?
My ID.
Yeah. So how is it voter suppression to request a vote for a presidential election, which it's always been that way? It's never not been that way. And I don't believe that is voter suppression. I don't believe that's white privilege. I just believe that's how our society operates to verify this is who you say you are.
Right.
So I mean, and then he goes from Jim Crow to Jim Eagle. That's one hell of a story.
Well, actually, I think that's actually. I think you bringing this up is actually a wonderful transition to something I did want to talk about, and that was the vaccine passports. You and I have kind of touched on this a little bit together, but we haven't fully fleshed it out. Initial thoughts?
As to whether I'm getting it or how I feel about it, that's a pretty broad question.
Let's not discuss whether or not we're getting it publicly on the podcast.
Okay.
But let's definitely discuss our feelings on it.
Do I believe people should be forced to take a vaccine? No, I do not. Do I believe passports should be required to, perform commerce? No, I do not. Do I think it's going to happen? I think it's going to be corporate mandated first, and then it will become government regulated or government mandated.
So you think it'll be private business mandated first? Can you actually
think about
pull
masks.
up on Google? Can you Google vaccine passport for us?
Well, it's going to be a coordinated effort. It's going to be similar how masks were. Where businesses overnight
They're
were all
all at
right,
the
you have
same
to have a
time.
mask. This is our policy.
Well-
And then once one big chain did it, the rest were like, oh, we got to be like them because you better be woke these days, otherwise BLM is going to come wreck your store or yeah. And so I don't have a very optimistic stance about it.
Well,
yeah.
and they're definitely going to enact this around travel.
Yeah.
That's an easy one because it was, I mean, think about how easy it is to sign an executive order and Donald Trump bans travel from 5 separate countries. Regardless or not of how you feel about it, it's a very easy target because travel is generally, more often than not, something that's not necessary. And when it comes to interstate affairs, that's the federal government's bread and butter. So that's going to be an easy thing for them to attack. Now, when it comes to, I think the better question when we're talking about how we feel about vaccine passports is let's bring it back to how do we feel about this vaccine in general? Do I think that any one person had a hand in perhaps making a vaccine that I don't think we could trust? Not at all. Do I think the scientific process had a hand in whether or not we can trust it? Absolutely. I mean, think about how long they have to test most vaccines to be FDA approved.
Yeah.
Operation Warp Speed or not, I mean, we can't pretend like it went through the exact same stringent testing as all the other vaccines that we have to take that are federally mandated. I mean, measles vaccine. I mean, you can name tons of vaccines that are federally mandated. You can't send your kids to a public school without it. This is just going to be another one added to it, so it's not something we've never seen before.
Yeah.
I 100% think it's something we've never seen before with this little testing.
With this little testing, but also, like, if you can't get on a plane, if you can't get on a cruise, and it's requiring passports, like, I don't, without long-term testing, I feel like it's not, they don't have the ground to stand on by our Constitution to be able to do this. That's how I feel about it.
Let's see what
Well, and I also think of it as in too, like, how are they gonna pick and choose stuff like that? Where, let's say something terrible happens, like, you know, a loved one passes away, and you don't have the vaccine, and you can't go back home to go to their funeral or help out with like family situations. Are they really gonna not let you get on a plane for something like that?
Well, okay, so no, that's actually a great point because would it have to be some sort of excuse me, slow rollout system? Because there's a lag time. There's a line, there's a wait for the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
There's a delay between the first shot and the second depending on which company's vaccine you get. So is it going to be a direct cutoff of
Right.
now nobody without the vaccine can't travel tomorrow? Because there's going to be a lot of logistical nightmares that they're going to have to deal with as a result of that. And I mean, you know, I know you're coming at it from a more like humanitarian standpoint, but that absolutely, but also the logistics around it is going to be a nightmare also.
Well, I mean, yeah, I've got a little bit of experience from the logistics industry, and I mean, keeping everything refrigerated and all of that, like, they'll be able to do it, but it's they've got to keep strict time windows. I mean, they already had the infrastructure built though from Operation Warp Speed when Trump was in office.
They're inheriting a decent background.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, they were already vaccinating people, or they're already giving okay, they weren't vaccinating 1 million people today. They're giving 1 million shots per day.
Well,
because like there's multiple rounds, and so like Biden in his last conference here, he made the claim that, look, we've put 100 million vaccinations in people's arms, which is not an inaccurate statement, but it is slightly misleading because they haven't vaccinated 100 million people.
Well, and let me address the elephant in the room. They were already doing 1 million shots a day under Donald Trump.
Correct.
So when Joe Biden comes into office and goes, you know, we're going to do 100 million shots in the next 100 days, it's like, no shit. You were already doing 1 million shots. Like, at least raise the bar if you're going to brag about it, right?
Well, Joe said, so since he's, you know, only 63 days in office, whenever he held this press conference, and he goes, well, you know, my goal originally was to have 100 million shots in my first 100 days, but I did that in 63. So he's saying I did that, like, as if it was his plan. And then after, you know, he initiates his plan, or, you know, after his plan's been hit because of because of Operation Warp Speed, then now he's saying, well, I'll have 200 million vaccinations by my first 100 days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so like, he did up the ante.
Okay, so let's read this real quick. So this is by 9 and 10 News. I went with the one. So there's one by the BBC, one by CNN, and the BBC one was 6 days ago. The CNN was 10 hours ago. The headline didn't look as interesting. This one actually looked like it was going to be talking about what is coming. So I'm going to go ahead and read first part of this. The Biden administration is working on a system for Americans to prove they have been vaccinated against the virus. They're calling it the Vax Pass, or vaccine passport. The passport could be used by individuals in the workplace, in school, or when traveling internationally. I think the only one of those we didn't say was school. A senior White House official says multiple agencies are involved in the planning, and this passport could play a role in multiple areas of daily life. The travel industry has been calling on the government to develop a kind of universal vaccine pass system, travel. According to the Washington Post, the demand for the pass is expected to become more urgent as more Americans continue to receive their dose of the vaccine. Is that it? Is that all they had?
That's it.
Okay, well, so I don't know how much is actually, like, hard detailed about how they're going to implement this is out, but I think everybody kind of can hear the rumblings of this coming.
Oh,
You know, I think I think under a different administration it may have been a question if it was happening. I think with this administration it's more how and when.
I would agree with I feel like that's an accurate assessment of just the vibe of what's going on.
So I'm not a biologist, this isn't medical advice. I will say that the short testing period definitely makes me nervous. Unfortunately, if I do need this to travel, we like our travel. That's
unfortunately we'll be
yeah. Michaela is a vagabond of sorts, so she's I have a feeling if they implement that and start taking away restrictions, I hate big government as much as the next guy, but I'm also a man of my freedoms. So that's gonna be a very, very tough question.
It's not gonna surprise me. I feel like when the forged document industry gets a sudden spike in business during that time. She's just laughing at the name. She doesn't even know about the story.
See, but that's a good laugh soundbite though, because we can throw that in in tons of different places in the episode. We're like, oh yeah, just giggle a little bit.
That was funny. You should have laughed harder. Let's add it there.
Yeah, let's up the volume. Debatable, but
the Joe Biden's filibuster comment, that absolutely irks me. Biden spent probably I don't know. I'd actually have to go back and see the time to time, but the dude talked about filibustering for 10 minutes. And in his argument to end the filibuster and how it's being overused, right, and how it's only been used this many times in this portion of history, but then now look at recently, it's getting used flagrantly. And if I'm not mistaken,
can you look up how many times Democrats have used the filibuster?
Yeah. Okay. Well, she looks that up, because I think I know the number, but I'm gonna wait till it's several hundred times in the last.
Right,
I'm pretty sure that during the last. Yeah.
I had a good idea. It was hard. Let's hit the Senate.gov. Always Senate.gov. The Senate should. Okay, well, let's read what this is. Has allowed for the use of the filibuster, a loosely defined term for action designed to prolong debate and delay or prevent a vote on a bill, resolution, amendment, or other debatable question. Prior to 1917, the Senate rules did not provide for a way to end debate and force a vote on a measure. That year, the Senate adopted a rule to allow a 2/3 majority to end a filibuster, a procedure known as cloture. In 1975, the Senate reduced the number of votes required for cloture from 2/3 of senators voting to 3/5 of all senators duly chosen and sworn, or 60 of the 100-member Senate. Yeah, so it's a way to, if you don't have a high enough majority decision on a piece of legislation, for them to basically sit on the floor and not allow for a vote to be made. But, while she's finding that, Calvin, how do you feel about a mechanism in the Senate designed to delay the vote on a decision? Just in a broad sense, regardless of how it's been used, what parties used it the most or abused it, just me saying it like that generally, how does that make you feel?
Well, in a broad sense, I mean, I've never known about our government without understanding what the filibuster did, though. So, I've since becoming aware of the filibuster and knowing that it's always been a part of our government and the history of how Congress is supposed to. It's part of the checks and balance system. That's that's how I look at the filibuster.
Right.
Because what the filibuster does is prevent Congress from passing something or pushing something that maybe society is upset about something, or it's the flavor of the moment. It's that hot button issue, and they're like, okay, we have to do something about it right now, but it may not be completely thought through. The filibuster provides the opportunity to prevent that from just immediately passing and all of a sudden creating policy that changes society and how you operate.
And when you say it on the face, it's a way to delay a majority decision. Immediately, I get a cringe feeling on that. I don't like
That's
it.
Fair.
We like to deliberate.
For sure. Absolutely. Yes.
Now, but seeing how it's been used, look, any mechanism that is put in place to prevent one party from sneaking out an overwhelming majority in the three branches of government and ramming through their policy agenda on every front, like that's what we've seen. You know, we had the most controversial election in US history in 2020. And since taking office, Joe Biden had what? In his first 30 days, he had 50 or more executive orders.
52.
52?
52.
That is the very definition of taking an opportunity and ramming through a complete and utter overhaul of the American way of living. So while I don't like the way it sounds on the face, anything that can be used to prevent one party from completely decimating any competition and creating a political monopoly, I am a fan of. So, you know, that's kind of my stance on the filibuster. Do I think it could be tweaked? Sure.
Well, if you eliminate the filibuster in just Congress, it becomes a one-party system. There is no two-party system.
Yeah. That's the whole point.
The little guy will never have an opportunity to get
Right.
like that.
Right.
That is the last leg for people of a minority, either in Congress or in reality.
Yeah.
That it gives you the opportunity to hold on to some aspect of your values if they're truly being infringed on, and it's that important to you. Because the thing about filibustering is you better eat your Wheaties. How long are you willing to how long do you think you can wait out Congress?
Yeah.
You better start reading Gone with the Wind or something like that, and it's because you need something that's going to waste a ton of time, and there's a lot of time and effort put into it. That's all there is to it. So you're stalling for something. And
did you figure out which party had used the filibuster more?
No, I didn't, but I found out the longest filibuster.
Okay, which was how long?
Not as long as I thought it was going to be.
24 hours?
Yeah.
And 18 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. But I think just Google who's used the filibuster most.
I just texted you the link, so if you go to his text.
Oh, I don't even know. I don't know how to go to text from here.
Hit mine. All right, guys. We got a headline here. It was the Democrats are demanding an end to the filibuster because, surprise, surprise, it's fucking racist. Let's add that to the list. So here's the thing. Of course, the Democrats are talking about a filibuster because it's some sort of racist mechanism, just like fucking everything, right? But, so I'm going to go ahead and read this. Democrats are desperate to end the filibuster. They see this as the key to passing their far left agenda, and they're right. Without the filibuster, Democrats would be able to pass pretty much whatever they want. So in an effort to get rid of the filibuster, they are calling it racist, which is ridiculous because Democrats used the filibuster over 300 times last year. Last year! I thought it was going to be 300 times in the last, decade. Once a day? Okay, Democrats used the filibuster 327 times compared to only once by the GOP. I just want to highlight that this is the perfect example of the hypocrisy on the left. They're going to complain about the filibuster, call it racist, because that's, honest to God, Republicans' only hope at the moment. It's absolutely ridiculous. 327 times compared to only once by the GOP, and then a year later, they're complaining and calling it racist, and we need to get rid of it. So, surprise, surprise.
And now you know why the filibuster comment bothered me so bad.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that was, thanks for bringing that up. That was actually gold.
327 times.
Yeah.
We're just going to bore you to death so you can sign a document.
Well, and
it's actually to avoid the signing of the document.
Right. Well,
what it does is it prevents it prevents the two-party system becoming a one-party system, because if you always have a majority, no matter what, you can just walk all over everybody. The filibuster allows them to prevent just blatant shit that shouldn't get passed through. I mean, sometimes there is good stuff that they stop from going through, but
for
there's
a partisan reason.
Correct, yes,
yeah.
But it's for a partisan reason. But what it does is it allows you to hold or maintain some of your values or morals and not just get completely walked on when you don't have majority in the House or Senate.
And for anybody watching, Calvin right now is talking to our buddy Bill, who just walked in while we were recording. So, Bill, I don't know if you want to yell and say hello.
Yo.
And
Welcome to the room, Bill.
That was Bill.
So, Bill, how do you feel about Asian hate in America?
Personally,
His name's Bill, but he is Asian, by the way. So
Asian as fuck.
we should here. Why don't you, Bill, come over here and jump on a microphone?
Oh, here, you can have my microphone.
Oh yeah, do you want to
Oh,
slide
yeah,
here
it's
and
good.
jump on the mic? But you've heard. Oh yeah, nice. You've heard a little bit about the Asian hate thing going on, right? You kind of seen a little bit about that.
I have. Me personally, I feel like I'm not educated enough to really take a stand on which side, or really identify the sides. But I'm just hypersensitive to see what is being fed to me on mainstream news. So I really didn't investigate or dive into what's been projected on Asian hate and all that. I intuitively think it's bullshit, but I don't.
Well, let me ask you this: have you felt any sort of Asian hate, like on a day-to-day basis? Do you
No.
feel any sort of like?
No, growing up, moving from Texas, Louisiana, Michigan, my brother was around a lot of African Americans. I was raised being around Caucasians majority of the time, but we've never had any issues. I've never had any racial pressure, tension in my upbringing. Nope.
Okay, so based off of your experience growing up in America as an Asian American, you currently feel like you're being fed a narrative rather than that actually being the reality you experienced growing up.
Right.
That answers that.
So where do you? I think this is a good question. Where do you primarily get your news from? Like where have you seen this narrative most? Social media, probably.
Social media. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that is a fair assumption, don't you? I mean, I think most people get their news from social media.
Bill, you would classify yourself as a millennial?
I would say right now, since there's so much noise, I don't know where to start diving into see what is trustworthy, what is just kind of noise, what is a distraction. So a framework would be kind of nice. Maybe a framework, a questionnaire to see what are my values, to see like a process to develop a process on.
Okay. So this is actually this is actually a good point that you bring up. So there's a thing. It's a digital literacy, and it's called digital sleuthing. This is something that digital sleuthing. So this is something that Gen Z is being trained a lot in, because I mean, we were all in school not too long ago. We took some computer classes, but it wasn't. If we were in school now, it's like, look, every class you have every class is a computer class. It's just using it in a different way each class. That's the standard now. But it's I totally forgot what I was about to talk about.
Framework.
Oh yeah, okay. So there's digital literacy. It's digital sleuthing, and it's teaching kids how to determine what is true and what is trustworthy online. So it's like a checklist, a specific framework. These are resources, how to figure out who funds a specific resource. And it's like, to really show kids, you can't just hear what one person says. I definitely think it is something where you have to kind of weigh what specific publications are saying, have an idea of where they lean partisan wise. And also, here's my number one recommendation for people. You can never go wrong looking at government websites, going straight to the source, and deciding for yourself what they mean when they're wording specific legislation. In the stimulus bill, you go read it, you decide for yourself when they say specific things what they actually mean. And you can have a pretty good idea based on past example. But also find independent publishers, independent journalists who don't work for the mainstream media, whose sole identity is dependent on them telling the truth. There's tons of publications where it's like, if they were caught lying or manipulating the truth, they're ruined because they're not getting propped up by Google on the front page of YouTube as, anytime you go on YouTube at the home screen and you go to the news, MSNBC, NBC, CNN, ABC, BBC. Like it's the same news outlets across the board. So it's not easy. It's not easy, is it? We actually had somebody who Calvin and I just recently met somebody who does news for a living, and she said the way we go about getting our news sounded difficult. And I was like, it's literally your only job.
Well, and if you're gonna choose to stick with mainstream, what I honestly would urge you to do is to ignore the head, like any headline that made you read the article, read it. I'm not telling you not to read the article, but what I'm telling you is to get rid of the headline, get rid of the adjectives, and look at the facts.
Emotion words.
Anything emotion
Telling you how you should feel about something.
So look for the facts first, and if you just start with the facts, just all right. What did they tell me about the facts? Okay, and then from those facts, look at the emotion that they're pushing, and then you generally know what they're trying to do with it, and why they're doing it. And like usually they're pulling at heartstrings most of the time. Now I'm not saying that they can't produce good content, because they can from time to time, but it's, in my experience, it's few and far between right now. And
well, and I think track record plays a huge role in this. You know, I don't want to tease anything, but if somebody would come out with an app that was holding news publications accountable on how many retractions they had per year, how many corrections they had to make on stories that came out, so it was essentially a news audit application.
That would be nice to see a ranking system.
Absolutely love that. It would be, hey, this is how many corrections you made. Your error rate is extremely high. You know? So that, I think that would be a very useful application that a ton of people would use today.
Well, but like honestly, I mean, outside of, I feel like mainstream media is at this point is becoming obsolete with where social media is heading, with where blockchain technology is coming into play on this.
Is absolutely
and
obsolete.
like independent journalists are now.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll catch you later.
Bill, do a shot of tequila with us.
All right, man.